Hey guys, this is Aaron from Chef Koenig and we are here today with Mitch from Mission Impossible.
Hey guys.
Today we're gonna be covering Scarlet Shadow, which is the ninja village in the Cadia Riverlands. And this video specifically was requested by Mitch as her favorite hero is Hanabi.
I really like that Hanabi skin. That skin with the pink hair and all, but I'm not really sure what's the name of the skin.
Oh, you mean the feel up skin? Yeah, it looks kinda
yeah.
cute.
Yeah, it does, right? It's really pretty.
Yeah. So we're gonna be covering the origins of Scarlet Shadow. So as we know, there are many styles and philosophy in the Cadia Riverlands, but one of the most noticeable and powerful is the ninja sector. The ninja sector was founded by the first disciple of the Great Dragon, even before Baxia and Yuzhong. After studying under the Great Dragon, he attained such a divine level of self-understanding that he created the ninja sect in his own style. The difference about ninjas is that unlike the oriental fighters of the Dragon Altar, the people from the ninja sectors focus more on speed and stealth, moving fast and delivering deadly blows. They build themselves through constant intense training, so much so that they can surpass the limits of their physical bodies, allowing them to move at such incredible speeds that they were almost seen as if flying over rooftops and running across walls. Eventually, they founded a village which is located at the north of the Cadia Riverlands. This is the Scarlet Shadow. As generations and generations pass, the ideologies of Scarlet Shadow diverge, separating the Scarlet Shadow into two sectors. The Scarlet Sector, which focused on the use of various ninja tools and weapons, and the Shadow Sector, which focused on the use of ninjutsu.
Ninjutsu is basically ninja magic, right?
Yes, pretty much. I think we can see ninjutsu a lot in most animes and TV shows such like Naruto. Basically that. Now we're gonna be covering the story and origin of Hanabi.
Hanabi has had this nightmare since she was young about Higanbana, the seventh armament of the ninja sector. She has had a nightmare since she was 7, dark and frigid yet tranquil. She floated atop the water as if suspended in mid-air. Thick, impenetrable mist swirled all around her. Amongst the darkness, the only light was a cluster of Higanbana off in the distance. They were a brilliant, eye-piercing crimson red as hellfire, like a fire burning on the distant shore that she would never reach. In the crimson, she sees the victims of the Higanbana. Wrapped around by the blossom of the Higanbana suspended in their tracks, she would always wake up in cold sweat from the nightmare. That was the year when, due to her inherited talent for cultivation, she unintentionally activated the ancient armaments of the Scarlet, Higanbana. All she remembered was being engulfed by the weapon and tumbling into a vast, nightmarish abyss. When she awoke, her eyes were filled with tears, but despite this, the crowd that had gathered before her cheered and congratulated her on becoming the one deemed worthy of being a successor of Scarlet. Even at her young age, Hanabi realized what this signified. Within the Scarlet Shadow, there were the Scarlet Sector, who preferred the use of weapons, and the Shadow Sector, with a predilection for ninjutsu. For generations, each vied for dominance over the other, and if the Scarlet leader wins, the Scarlet Sector wins. All young Hanabi could do was place her trust in the sector and their plan. She therefore took on the solemn duty and tried her utmost to keep her head held high. Day after day, she trained hard, sweat streaming down her body from sun up to sundown. In competitions, Hanabi was undefeated. Over time, she became accustomed to victory and accustomed to the dark river that flowered within her dreams. She knew that when she reached that shore, she would harness the power of Higanbana and then truly become the leader of the Scarlet Sector. This all changed when Hayabusa arrived. Of all the remarkable individuals of the Shadow Sector, Hayabusa was the most distinguished, like an apparition. He would appear at competitions, swiftly defeat his opponents, and leave without uttering a single word. It was as if he wasn't even interested in the competitions. Hanabi would often track Hayabusa down and challenged him to a fight. As they clashed, the two of them fleeted across mountain streams and over thatched roofs, their blades clashing and clanging more times than one could count. In the end, however, Hanabi would always be bested, and the Black River would begin to swell, the water reaching its banks. With every defeat, Hanabi, filled with resignation, would ask Hayabusa how he managed to outdo her, and every time all he would do is shrug his shoulder and say, "Because the moon looks lovely tonight."
Wow, I never expected Hayabusa to say cheesy things like this, since he is always so mysterious and deadly in the game. But now we're gonna be covering the origins of Hayabusa. So Hayabusa is the second son of the head of the Shadow Sector. Since childhood, he grew up under his father's iron-handed rules. And while his ninjutsu could never rival that of his brother, he was a kind family member to him. When Hayabusa learned that his brother had been harmed by Hanzo, he resolved to spend the rest of his days mastering ninjutsu in order to hunt down and exact revenge upon Hanzo. Now we're gonna be covering the childhood of Hayabusa. So Hayabusa is a ninja born in the Shadow Sector, second son of the Shadow Sector leader. He was sent to the Scarlet Sector to study as their disciple in an educational exchange between the two sectors. They arranged for Hanabi and Hayabusa to grow up together, and if all went well, for them to marry once grown. Together, they would become the links between the Scarlet and Shadow sectors. When Hayabusa was sent to the Scarlet Sector, he had no idea that his family already planned his life out for him. His father told him sternly, "From this day, you're a disciple to be raised by both the Scarlet and Shadow Sector. You should be every bit as outstanding as your brother. As my son, you cannot afford to fall behind." The greatest leader of the ninja had always been known as the Akagage, and Hayabusa's brother was widely considered to be in the running for the next strongest ninja, the next Akagage. To the young Hayabusa, the shadow cast by his brother was as great as a mountain and just as hard to climb out from. But he swore to himself, "I'll follow in my brother's footsteps." To achieve this goal, Hayabusa began training in earnest and soon stood head and shoulders above the other disciples. This also placed a lot of competition and pressure on the proud Hanabi as well. From the first time Hayabusa beat Hanabi in a trial competition, he gained himself a rival that would last the entirety of his childhood, and on the eve of each full moon, do her utmost to provoke a fight between them. Hayabusa started out a little tense, but soon gained self-confidence after a series of victories. Each of Hanabi's challenges all ended in defeat for her. One day, Hayabusa was suddenly summoned home. His father's face was haggard as he told Hayabusa, "Your brother's mission is now yours to bear. You are now my only son." It felt like his whole world was spinning, but Hayabusa became aware of a scandal in Scarlet Shadow. The first Akagage had used secret arts to create the demon Yuma, an existence created to act as a shadow opponent for use in training. Yet it grew sentient and devoured him. Disaster followed. Eventually, the demon Yuma was sealed away. Yet a part of his conscious managed to escape, and it ended up assuming control over the ninja prodigy, Hanzo, the shadow of the time. Hanzo became a demonic form from his prior self, stealing away Scarlet Shadow's treasures and causing a massacre, then fleeing. By the time Hayabusa was already a teen, on the eve of the full moon each month when the competition was held, he and Hanabi would lie upon the tall rooftops together and gaze at the moon. Sometimes Hanabi would shoot a glance at him and say, "I'll become the Scarlet Leader," and Hayabusa would say too, "I'll find that guy, find that devilish Hanzo, and he will complete his brother missions and become the Akagage in his place." The day of the coming of age ceremony just so happened to coincide with the full moon's eve. Hayabusa caught wind that Hanzo had appeared beyond the Cadia Riverlands and knew that it was time for him to bid the Scarlet Shadow farewell. As had become convention, this was the night that he and Hanabi would test each other on the rooftop. Yet, it was her coming of age ceremony. Would she come at all? Given she was a childhood friend, he felt he should give her a farewell. With his backpack, Hayabusa headed out with his emotions in turmoil. He hadn't walked a few steps when the heavy rain and fog suddenly stopped, blocked by a Seimei umbrella. Kagura pressed close to him, saying, "Hayabusa, I want to go with you too." Hayabusa waved a finger at her. "Listen here, this isn't a game. I'm not heading out for fun." Just then, lit up by the blending flash of lightning, Hayabusa caught sight of Hanabi stumbling over. Her face was as white as a sheet. Without a second thought, he handed the sodden Hanabi the umbrella. Yet she walked past hurriedly, as if she hadn't seen him at all. He could do nothing but swallow the goodbye he had prepared. It was on that night that Hayabusa bid his childhood farewell. "Goodbye, Hanabi. Goodbye, Scarlet Shadow. I'll embark on my journey, forcing myself through the most grueling training, for I must become stronger than any of my line before me. Hanzo, I will find you and defeat you. I must become the Akakage."
Okay, now we'll be covering Kagura. In the Cadia Riverlands, there exists a mysterious profession called Onmyoji Master that uses the yin-yang arts to control spirits and see into the future. The great dragon bestowed this special power to channel yin and yang on people of the Cadia Riverlands, and one of his own disciples became the first ever Onmyoji Master. There was once an Onmyoji Master named Seimei, so powerful that he could control spirits and even bring the dead back to life. Many legends were told about him. Some said he followed the great dragon to the dragon altar and learned the greatest yin-yang arts. Some said he once assisted the first Akakage in sealing the demonic Hanikage, and some even said he'd lived to this day with secret yin-yang arts. To Seimei's descendants, the most precious legacy from their great ancestor is the Seimei umbrella that can transform into different shapes. The umbrella was refined by the great Seimei himself using power from 100 ghosts. It is believed that it now possesses life and wisdom of its own, allowing it to choose its own rightful owner. For years, the Seimei umbrella lay quietly inside the shrine. Every year, at the memorial for Seimei, people would sincerely pray to it on their knees, wishing for better mastery of the yin-yang arts. But centuries passed, and the Seimei umbrella never once showed any miracle. Everything changed when Kagura, the descendant of Seimei, stepped into the shrine to pray for the first time. Before the ceremony started, the naughty orphan girl secretly climbed up a tree outside the shrine to sneak a peek at the altar inside. When halfway up on the tree, she was spotted by a boy a little older than her. The boy named Hayabusa was the son of the Shadow Supreme Grandmaster from the Scarlet Shadow. Here on an invitation with his family, he had no interest in the complicated ritual either, and happened to see Kagura climbing up the tree when looking around out of boredom. Before Kagura could cheer for finally climbing up to the top, the grown-ups on the ground had spotted her, and each began scolding her for possibly angering the great ancestor. But the little girl refused to admit her faults and argued that she only climbed the tree because she heard somebody calling out for her over at the altar. As their arguments got heated, filled with indignation, Kagura slipped and fell head down first off the tree. Hayabusa immediately rushed to the tree trunk with his ninjutsu and leapt up to hold her by her waist. At the very moment, a large umbrella bloomed above Kagura and Hayabusa, and the two kids reached out to the handle at once, safely landing like a floating dandelion tuft. It's the Seimei umbrella! A miracle from the Seimei umbrella! The crowd exclaimed in surprise while Kagura stared at the big umbrella in her hand and smiled. "So it was you who were calling for me." The Seimei umbrella kept Kagura's company from then on. It witnessed every trouble she'd ever caused, experienced all their joy, sadness, and anger as she gradually grew up, and understood her feelings for Hayabusa was changed from friendship to secret affection. When Kagura dressed up to attend Hayabusa's coming-of-age ceremony, she accidentally heard their seniors talking and realized why Hayabusa became distant recently. Is he Going to leave the Cadia Riverlands and also to leave me? So, what should I do? Holding back her tears, Kagura stared at the evening rain outside her window, when the same umbrella had already flown out and opened on its own. Right, the same umbrella's right. I'll find him and follow him to the ends of the world. Kagura sneaked out of her house and ran toward Hayabusa in the pouring rain. It could be the biggest trouble she'd ever caused, but it'd also be the biggest bet she'd ever placed. Thunder roared and lightning flashed along the long road, but Kagura didn't care, because she could go on an adventure with Hayabusa and with the same umbrella. On the street of the Scarlet Shadow, Kagura stopped Hayabusa just after he left home and said, "Hayabusa, I'll go with you." As Hayabusa's name left her mouth, the young girl that needed the big brother's help was no more. Whether the oblivious Hayabusa had realized it or not, Kagura had become an all-new person to travel the world with him.
Now we're gonna be covering the last known hero of the Scarlet Shadow. That would be Hanzo, the demonic ninja. As we know, Hanzo is the main villain of the Scarlet Shadow, just like how Yu Zhong is the main villain of Dragon Altar. There is a legend that 100 ghosts attacked the house of the Akagage. The demons within then merge and become a single entity, thus beginning a bloody feud between the Akagage and the demon Hanakage. At a grave cost, the Akagage used the ninjutsu Blood Shadow known as Ame no Habakiri. Not long after, the forefathers of the Akagage perished from the world. Their grieving disciples hid Ame no Habakiri in an unknown place that the only members of the Akagage family could reach. Little did the Akagage know, the cunning goddess of death, Izanami, observed these events and secretly inserted a part of her soul in one of their prodigy to one day resurrect Hanakage. After many generations, the house of Akagage was divided into the Crimson and Shadow factions. The Shadow faction gave birth to the strongest Akagage the clan has ever seen, Hanzo. As one would expect, Hanzo became the head of the Shadow faction. However, one day, Hanzo's team discovered his secret. All this time, Hanzo secretly fused Hanekage's power with his own body, feeding the demon with blood of his enemies. When confronted by the Akagage's Crimson faction, Hanzo killed them all in cold blood. Absorbing the blood of such powerful people, Hanekage regained consciousness once again. Hanekage told Hanzo that his noble clan hid that powerful Ame no Habakiri as well as a sacred ninjutsu in a secret location only the Akagage could reach. The power-hungry Hanzo abused his blood right to acquire the forbidden ninjutsu and the fabled sword, the Ame no Habakiri. The remaining members of the Akagage furiously chased after the clan's traitor. Emboldened by the power of the Hanakage, Hanzo used his own clan's sword against them and tore the powerful energy from their flesh. Desperate, the two Akagage factions came together once again to take on Hanzo. Heavily wounded, the final member of the noble house of Akagage could only watch Hanzo escape. Hanzo secretly took refuge, recovering from his injuries. Night and day, Hanzo practiced the Akagage forbidding jutsu with Ame no Habakiri. After a decade, Hanzo could not achieve the pinnacle of ninjutsu just like his forefathers. Hanekage consumed the flood and blood of the fallen ninjas and transformed into a magical armor for Hanzo. Hanekage struck a deal with Hanzo. In exchange for feeding the Hanekage more blood, the powerful demon will help Hanzo reach the pinnacle of ninjutsu. Possessing the ability to reach the pinnacle of ninjutsu and the Ame no Habakiri, Hanzo brought bloodbath to the world. As we know, there is a cinematic where Kagura, Hanabi, and Hayabusa were fighting Hanzo. But this was done more during the revamp for Hanabi, which was very recent. But it doesn't have an actual lore behind it or how they are confronted by Hanzo. Alright guys, this is all for today. We have not decided what video we will do next time. But please like and subscribe to both our channels and share the video with your friends.
And don't forget to check out my channel mentioned on the title or the descriptions down below and give me a sub if you're into gaming contents. Bye guys!
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally